Good afternoon. The reason that we're all here in the courthouse today is because of the Graft Oil Company. They're the defendant in this case. And we're here because the Graft Oil Company is 100% at fault for what happened because they were 100% negligent. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, says who? Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you'll hear later, says the court. It has already been decided before today that the Graft Oil Company, the defendant, is 100% at fault for what happened in this case. So let me tell you the story of what happened. It's February 4, 2017, and this is the Graft Oil mini-mart. It's a Honey Bear. They own a bunch of them around western Pennsylvania, and this one's located in Leechburg. A couple miles away from here is a rental property, and a 68-year-old woman is working in there with her daughter and her granddaughter, and they're having a great time. They're painting, they're fixing up for the next tenant to come and move into the rental property. The woman realizes that they need some more supplies to continue the fix-up process, so she gets in her car and she drives down to Sanford's, which is about a quarter mile from the Graft Oil Mini-Mart, picks up her supplies, and then drives over to the mini-mart, as she had done many, many times before as a loyal customer, walks in, goes over to a machine, gets a scratch-off lotto ticket, waves to the employees at the Graft Oil Company, walks out the door, turns left, and there's ice right on the sidewalk. I can't get into the facts that make it a 100% negligence case, but this ice shouldn't have been there. And the woman slips on the ice, and she suddenly and unexpectedly slams down hard on her left hip on the concrete. She outstretches her hand, she feels pain immediately. She tries to get up and she can't because the pain is so significant. A commotion starts. Employees from the Graft Oil Company run out. Are you okay? They try to get her up, they can't get her off the ground. Two nice men that were pumping gas come over and physically lift the woman off the ground and carry her and put her inside of her vehicle. She wants to just get out of there, but she can't. She's in too much pain. She has the manager call her daughter, who's over at the rental property. Her daughter comes over and it's a night and day difference of her mom. Looks totally different. When her daughter sees her, calls 911. Paramedics come to the scene. They have to physically pick the woman up and put her into the ambulance. She tells them, I've got severe pain in my left hip area. And as they're driving to the emergency room, the woman also tells the paramedics that she's starting to feel tingling down her left leg that she's never felt before. She gets to the emergency room, and because of her age and her being a woman and a fall on her hip, they're concerned about a hip fracture. And so the woman's told to follow up with an orthopedic surgeon, and she does just a couple days later. And this orthopedic surgeon specializes in hips. But pretty soon it becomes apparent the woman doesn't have a hip fracture, something else is going on. And then a diagnostic study, a CT scan, and then an MRI shows that it wasn't a hip fracture. The woman injured the nerves coming out of her spine that run down her hip and into her leg. She requires physical therapy, it doesn't work. Medications to treat the pain, it doesn't work. Injections in her spine, it doesn't work. So she goes to another orthopedic surgeon, and as a last ditch, the last option, tries radical surgery called a spinal fusion. And while it improves some of the symptoms, it doesn't get her anywhere near 100% that she was before she encountered the ice on this sidewalk. And the woman has a permanent pain condition to this very day, nearly 2 years after the fall. And that woman's name is Rose DeToma, and I represent her in this case. We are suing the Graft Oil Company because they were 100% negligent for what happened. This was completely avoidable and never should have happened. None of us should be here right now. But because of their negligence, Mrs. DeToma, who was just minding her business, having a great day, fell, and her life has been significantly changed ever since. Nothing has ever been the same since. And so we are here suing them for the civil money damages that the law provides, reasonable compensation for what happened to this woman. So let me tell you what we have to prove in this case to you to win this case. Normally, we would have to prove negligence. We'd have to show you how they were at fault. But this case is so clear-cut. Their negligence is 100% and Rose is 100% innocent. That's already been decided. You don't have to worry about that. So all this case is about is what did their 100% fault cause? What damage does that cause? And what are the extent of damages? And that's what the testimony in this case is going to focus on. But never lose sight of the fact that the only reason we are here is because this company was 100% at fault. So let's start with causation. So what you're going to find, the facts will prove that before this fall, she was a 68-year-old woman, but she was very physically active, and that she had no history of pain and no history of medical treatment related to her hip, the spinal nerves, her left leg, and the pain in her left leg. Nothing before this. You'll see that the records demonstrate that she had pain immediately after the fall. She'll tell you she experienced it the moment that she hit. The paramedic records back up that she's saying she's in pain, and they recognize she's in so much pain they need to take her to the emergency room. And they'll tell you that immediately during the transport, signs of a spinal injury are manifesting right then. And you'll see that this was a left-sided impact, okay? And she's had left-sided hip and leg problems ever since. But we're not going to stop there. What you're going to see and what the doctors are going to tell you is that this is the area where Rose impacted on the concrete. And as you can see, we have all these different nerves that come out, and this is called the sciatic bundle, okay? We've all heard of sciatica. It's all the nerves that run down our leg and then go and help us feel and give us motor function. Well, they come out of the back down here. And what happens is that when Rose slams down on the concrete, these nerves get injured. They get aggravated from a condition that they were before that didn't cause Rose any pain. And so you're going to hear the testimony from Rose's treating doctor, her primary care doctor, Dr. Dugan. Dr. Dugan will tell you and confirm the fact that Rose had no problems before this. She had no pain in the hip, no pain in the leg. She didn't need any pain or narcotic medications. She wasn't depressed. And then she'll tell you that later she needed pain medications. And that the first time Dr. Dugan sees her, Dr. Dugan diagnosed that this fall happens and that Rose has left hip pain and prescribes her pain medication as a result, and has continued to prescribe her pain medication ever since. Dr. Dugan will tell you that after the surgery, several months later, that Dr. Schmidt performs, that Rose becomes depressed, and that Dr. Dugan starts prescribing her antidepressant medications. Dr. Schmidt will testify and tell you about the causation, about how an injury to the nerves aggravates the nerves and causes all of the problems that Rose has had ever since, and all the care that Rose has undergone, the surgery that he performed, and the fact that despite all of these efforts, Rose is nowhere near back to 100%, and unfortunately she's probably stuck the way she is now for the rest of her life. And just for planning purposes, so you know how long this trial is going to take, Dr. Dugan's deposition is about 45 minutes, it's on video, and Dr. Schmidt's is about an hour and 15 minutes. So specifically what Dr. Schmidt is going to explain is first some anatomy, okay? And this is the same for all of us, everybody here. Our spine protects our spinal cord. It's bones, and then there's squishy discs in between. The spinal cord runs from our brain all the way down to our lower buttocks area. And at each level, each of these bone levels, there's a nerve root that comes out. Some of the nerves extend into our arms, and others come out down here from our lower back, through our hip, and down our legs. Now, there's a little tunnel, a bony tunnel, okay, where the nerve root comes out. And if the nerve is too big due to swelling and the hole is too small, that can cause aggravation from the inflammation. And so what we're going to find out here, and what you're going to hear from Dr. Schmidt, is that as a result of the fall, so now this is on the left side of the body, this is the back, this is the front, that this fall caused trauma to Rose's nerves coming out of the lower part of her spine. And then that in turn caused inflammation, And that inflammation is what's causing all of her pain. He calls it a pain cascade once that happens. And one of the reasons that it happened, and the reason that older people are more susceptible to the injury that Rose sustained than, say, a 20-year-old varsity football player. And this goes for all of us, unfortunately. All of us are aging right now. And over the age of 30, all of our spines start to age. And they may transition in different levels. Some may degenerate faster than others, but all of us are having that level of spine degeneration over time. And so sometimes it affects the discs, and sometimes it affects the way that the space is here. Sometimes the bones build up, sometimes the disc pushes in here. But normally, we don't really experience any symptoms naturally because our body acclimates over time. But Dr. Schmidt will explain that when trauma happens, it changes the nerves. And so even though there was aging, there was degeneration that maybe had made this space a little closer, that it's that aggravation to this nerve, and now there being less space due to aging and the degeneration process makes this that much more of an injury. So the trauma caused aggravation, the aggravation caused inflammation, and the inflammation is what Rose has been dealing with ever since this fall. Now you heard that word aggravation, and you'll hear Dr. Schmidt say that aggravation or exacerbation is another word that he uses. The law in this case, and something that you'll have to consider at the end, is that the defendant, if they're 100% negligent, then they are responsible for any aggravation of a pre-existing condition, which would be an aged spine like Rose and any of us would have, caused by the incident. So the point being that if Rose had no symptoms, no problems whatsoever with her spine, even if she had some level of aging in her spine, which is almost certainly what the case was, just like any of us, the defendant is responsible for any aggravation of that condition. If it becomes painful and then she needs treatment for that pain, that is their responsibility. That's what the law is. And so you're going to hear that because of the injuries up here, she develops this sciatica or radiculopathy, which is this shooting or electric or burning type pain that's essentially permanent. Ebbs and flows, but is always there. Some people call it pilot light pain because it's always flickering. Sometimes it turns up higher, sometimes lower, but it's always there. And so to prove the damages in this case, we're going to bring you, in addition to the doctors, Mary DeToma, that's the daughter of Rose, Guy DeToma, that's Rose's husband, and of course Rose. And they're going to tell you about Rose's life before this, what she was all about, what her life was like and her involvement with her family. You're going to hear that Rose is a pretty special person. She's a serial entrepreneur. Her whole life has been running successful businesses. First, she ran a successful drapery business. Then she transitioned into a rental property business that she then taught her daughter how to run, because Rose took care of Guy's parents when they were dying, and she became so moved by the process that she decided on her own in the 90s to start a personal care home. And it became a success. Her and Guy started this. They ran into the mid-2000s, and then you'll hear that they sold it. Despite it being a complete success, they only sold it so that they could dedicate their golden years of their life, their retirement, the remaining years that they have together with their family, helping their daughter and their son Jacob raise their respective families. Because that's what Rose is all about. It's all about family. And you're going to hear that she was a very active person. That this is a picture of them at just the summer before when they're walking through an amusement park. Rose has no problems, not a step behind. She's with everybody. You'll hear that she was the centerpiece of cooking, of the family get-togethers. Going to her grandchildren's sporting games was the light of her life, and that's all been impacted. That's what this case is about. And so what you're going to find out is that instead of this wonderful retirement that she had, spending all with family and helping care for her grandchildren and her children, that she gets this new sort of unwanted job of having to go to get tons of medical care, tons of physical therapy that doesn't work, having to be prescribed pain medications and different medications that she'd never been prescribed before, trying different medical treatments, having hope that they're going to work, and then them not working and just being painful and difficult to get through. And ultimately, because of how bad things got, her final option is a fusion surgery. And now she will forever have these screws and rods stuck inside of her spine, screwed inside of her spine, holding her spine together, decreasing her mobility, ability to twist, turn, bend over for the rest of her life. And you'll hear that this was a brutal surgery, but she went through it because she thought it at least might give her some chance. And it improved her left leg a little bit. Her strength came back a little bit, but it unfortunately has not helped her pain very much. And Dr. Schmidt will tell you that this is probably a permanent condition she has now. Now, the law provides in Pennsylvania for civil damages when somebody else is 100% at fault and they cause harm to you. That our state laws, based off of our Constitution, says that you are permitted to seek civil damages, and that's what we're here for. And so I'm going to have this chart throughout the course of the trial that I'm going to fill in as the different evidence comes in. And these are the different categories of damages that the law in Pennsylvania recognizes that somebody should be fairly compensated for when they're injured by the 100% fault of somebody else, like the Graft Oil Company. And I'm going to fill that in because then at the end of the trial, you'll be able to see all of the different ways that the damages have added up and the different ways that things have been taken away from Rose over the course of the past 2.5 years and what she's been left with probably for the rest of her life. Now, I want you to imagine for a second that you owned a home or you lived in a home for 30 years and a family moves in and a kid, he's wild next door, keeps being told don't play ball, still does it, and then one day smacks a ball, goes right through your window, breaks a beautiful old window in your house. Knock, knock, knock on the door, answer it, the boy's there with the parent. Parent says little Billy is 100% at fault for that window, but we're not going to pay for that window. You said, why? We're not going to pay for that window because that's an old window. And who's to say that it wasn't going to break anyway? Or who's to say that some other reason it would have gotten broken? Maybe somebody else would have hit a ball into it. Maybe you would have broken it down in the future. And so that's why we're not going to pay for it. Now imagine that scenario. I believe that the evidence in this case will show that the defendants are approaching this that way. I believe that the defendants are going to tell you, yes, we are 100% fault, but we do not think that we should pay for anything that was caused to this woman. I think we're here because they just don't think that this is worth very much or anything. And before I sit down, I also just want to point out that courthouses are not a place for hinting. This is a place for saying what you mean and then backing it up with proof. And that's what I'm going to aim to do. And what I'd really like to know before I sit down is what exactly is the defense in this case? Are they saying that Rose is being greedy? Are they saying that she's exaggerating or lying about her injuries? Are they saying that none of this stuff is related? Or are they just saying that it's not worth very much? I hope the defense counsel will tell us right now when they stand up here why we are here and what the defense is to what happened in this case. Thank you.